Ava Montgomery had never felt out of place before. She carried herself with quiet confidence wherever she went. But today, as she stepped out of her car and walked toward the grand private school gates, a strange feeling tugged at her chest. The air was thick with whispers and sideways looks. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other, and she did not belong here. Ava looked down at her son, Zion, holding his small hand tightly. Zion was calm, but his eyes were wide, curious about this new world around him. He had on a neat little backpack, and his shoes shone bright in the sunlight. Ava smiled softly to reassure him. This was his first day at school. A fresh start. The school building stood tall and white, with clean windows that reflected the clear blue sky. Around the courtyard, groups of children played and parents talked in small clusters. The mothers wore expensive dresses, shiny jewelry, and carried designer bags. Their voices were light, but the looks they gave Ava were sharp and cold. Ava kept her head high. She had worked hard to get here. After years of homeschooling Zion, she decided it was time for him to make friends and learn how to be part of a bigger community. This school was the best in the area, but it came with a price, not just money, but fitting in. As Ava and Zion walked up the stone path, a woman with perfectly styled hair and a bright smile looked their way. Her name was Marlene Devereux. Marlene was known among the school moms as the Queen Bee. Her laughter was loud and her opinions louder. She whispered something to the woman next to her, Bianca Sterling. Bianca's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at Ava. They did not say anything out loud, but their faces told the whole story. Ava was different, not like them. They did not hide their judgment. Ava was the only black mother among the crowd, the only one who did not wear the latest fashion or the expensive perfume. She wore a simple dress and carried a sturdy tote bag with books and lunch boxes inside. The group of rich moms started to chuckle quietly. Some looked at Ava as if she had brought something dirty with her. Ava's heart beat a little faster, but she did not stop walking. She held Zion's hand tighter and gave him a gentle squeeze. She wanted him to feel safe, even if the world around them felt unkind. Zion looked up at her and smiled shyly. "Mom, are they laughing at me?" he asked quietly. "No, baby," Ava whispered. "They are just surprised to see you here. But we belong here just like anyone else." Zion nodded, but Ava could see he was unsure. She wished she could protect him from everything, from the sharp looks, the whispers, the cold stares. But she knew she could only teach him to stand tall. They reached the school entrance where a tall man in a suit greeted the children. His name was Mr. Collins, the school receptionist. He smiled warmly at Zion and opened the door. "Welcome, Zion. We are glad to have you." Ava thanked him and helped Zion step inside. The school smelled of fresh paint and clean floors. Inside, children laughed and teachers called out names. Zion's eyes sparkled with excitement. For a moment, Ava forgot the coldness outside. But as they walked down the hall, Ava caught a glimpse of Marlene and Bianca watching from the window. Their smiles had vanished. Ava knew this was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, Ava sat on a bench near the playground while Zion played. She watched the other mothers talk in groups, their voices full of gossip and laughter. Occasionally, she heard snatches of their conversation. "There goes the scholarship mom," one whispered. "She looks like she should be working in the cafeteria," another said. Ava's face remained calm, but inside she felt the sting of those words. She was not a scholarship mom. She had worked hard, saved every penny, and now she and her husband had the means to give Zion a good life. But here, none of that mattered. All they saw was her skin color and her simple dress. Zion ran over to her, his cheeks flushed from playing. "Mom, they won't let me play with their kids," he said softly. Ava hugged him close. "It's okay, baby. Sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand. But you are kind and smart. You will make true friends soon." Zion smiled and ran back to the swings. Ava sat quietly, watching him. She made a promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would protect Zion. She would teach him to be proud of who he was. She would not let the whispers and cold stares break them. As the sun began to set, Ava stood up. Tomorrow would be a new day, one full of challenges but also hope. She looked toward the school gates one last time and whispered, "We are here to stay." The next morning arrived with a soft glow in the sky. Birds chirped on the tree branches outside the Montgomery family home. Inside, Ava stood at the kitchen counter, carefully slicing fresh strawberries for Zion's lunchbox. She moved slowly, her mind full of thoughts from the day before. Zion was still sleeping. He always took a while to wake up, curling under the covers like a sleepy cat. Ava smiled as she packed his lunch. She added a small note on a folded piece of paper. Said, "You are strong. You are kind. You are loved." Soon, Zion walked into the kitchen with messy hair and sleepy eyes. He rubbed his face and gave his mother a lazy hug. She kissed the top of his head and handed him his breakfast. As they got ready to leave for school, Ava looked at herself in the mirror. She wore a simple blouse and jeans. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She thought about the way the other mothers looked at her. She thought about their laughter and their stares. But instead of changing her clothes, she stood taller. She reminded herself that she had nothing to prove. At the school gates, the same group of mothers stood near the entrance. Marlene held a large coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other. Bianca stood beside her, flipping through pictures on her tablet. Both women paused when they saw Ava and Zion walk up. Their smiles faded. They turned away, pretending not to notice. Ava held Zion's hand tighter as they stepped into the playground. Children were laughing and running across the field. Some jumped rope. Some tossed balls back and forth. But as soon as Zion walked up to a group of boys near the slide, the laughter stopped. One of the boys, a tall blonde child with freckles, looked at Zion and frowned. His name was Knox Sterling. He was Bianca's son. He crossed his arms and said loudly, "You cannot play here." Zion blinked in surprise. He had only just gotten there. "I was going to play tag," he said politely. Knox shook his head. "This is not your game. Go somewhere else." Zion looked around. The other boys were staring. Some looked away, pretending to be busy. No one spoke up for him. He backed away slowly, his face turning red. Ava watched it all from the bench near the fence. She had seen the whole thing. Her hands gripped the edge of the bench, but she stayed quiet. She wanted to run over and protect her son, but she knew he needed to try and handle it first. Zion walked over to a different group, this time girls who were playing with chalk on the pavement. One girl smiled at him and offered him a piece of chalk. But before he could sit down, Knox walked over again. "You do not belong here," Knox said sharply. "Why are you even at this school? My mom said people like you get in for free." Zion looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean you do not fit. My mom says your mom is poor." Knox turned to the girls. "Come on, let's go." Zion blinked in surprise. He had only just gotten there. "I was going to play tag," he said politely. Knox shook his head. "This is not your game. Go somewhere else." Zion looked around. The other boys were staring. Some looked away, pretending to be busy. No one spoke up for him. He backed away slowly, his face turning red. Ava watched it all from the bench near the fence. She had seen the whole thing. Her hands gripped the edge of the bench, but she stayed quiet. She wanted to run over and protect her son, but she knew he needed to try and handle it first. Zion walked over to a different group, this time girls who were playing with chalk on the pavement. One girl smiled at him and offered him a piece of chalk. But before he could sit down, Knox walked over again. "You do not belong here," Knox said sharply. "Why are you even at this school? My mom said people like you get in for free." Zion looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean you do not fit. My mom says your mom is poor." Knox turned to the girls. "Come on, let's go." The girls followed him, even the one who had been kind. Soon Zion was left standing alone on the pavement, holding a piece of broken chalk in his hand. Ava could not sit still any longer. She stood up and walked toward the school office. She asked to speak with Principal Gaines. Principal Gaines was a tall man with gray hair and glasses. He sat behind a big wooden desk covered in papers and folders. He looked up and smiled politely when Ava walked in. "Good morning, Mrs. Montgomery," he said. "Good morning, Principal Gaines." I need to speak with you about something important, Ava said firmly. My son is being bullied on the playground. This is the second day in a row. A boy named Knox told him he could not play because of how he looks. Principal Gaines folded his hands together. I am very sorry to hear that. I am sure it was just a misunderstanding. Children sometimes say silly things. We cannot always control what they do. Ava frowned. This was not silly. It was mean and hateful. Zion is being singled out because he is different. That should not happen at any school, especially this one. The principal gave a tight smile. I understand your concern. I will make a note of it and speak with the teacher on duty. Ava could feel the door of understanding closing in front of her. She stood up. With all due respect, I hope you do more than just make a note. This is serious. Principal Gaines nodded slowly. Of course. Thank you for coming in. As Ava walked out of the office, she felt her heart growing heavier. It seemed that no one was ready to face the truth. Not the mothers. Not the teachers. Not even the leader of the school. Later that day, at pickup time, the same group of mothers gathered again. They laughed and shared stories about their trips and beauty treatments. Marlene wore a bright red coat and shiny boots. Bianca carried a small white dog in a bag. Ava stood a short distance away, waiting for Zion. She could hear them talking. They were not trying to whisper this time. I heard she complained to the principal, Bianca said. Marlene scoffed. Of course she did. She wants everyone to feel sorry for her. Another mother spoke up. Did you see the way her son just stood there? Like he expected to be included. This is not the park. It is a private school. Ava looked at them. Not with anger. Not with fear. But with a kind of stillness that made the others shift uncomfortably. Zion ran up to her and hugged her around the waist. She smiled down at him. How was your day, baby? It was okay. I played by myself. I made a chalk rocket, he said proudly. Ava kissed the top of his head. That is wonderful. I am proud of you. As they walked away from the crowd, Ava looked up at the sky. It was turning golden as the sun set behind the trees. The breeze touched her face gently. She did not have all the answers yet. She did not know how long it would take for things to change. But she knew one thing. Her son would not be broken by their cruelty. He would rise, and so would she. The following week arrived with gray skies and a soft drizzle that made the streets look like silver ribbons. Rain tapped gently on the roof of Ava's car as she pulled into the school parking lot. She sat for a moment, staring out the windshield. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Zion was in the back seat, humming a song as he flipped through a picture book. He seemed calmer today, not cheerful but steady. Ava watched him through the mirror and wondered how much he had kept to himself. Children often smile even when their hearts are heavy. Today was the school's cultural inclusion event. It was meant to celebrate the many backgrounds of the families at the school. Ava had received the invitation in her email a week ago. She had thought about ignoring it, but something told her it was important to be there. Not just for Zion, but for the truth of who they were. Ava had reached out to her longtime friend Simone Kalu, a Nigerian fashion designer known for her bold and beautiful prints. Simone had agreed to design something for her to wear. When the outfit arrived 2 days ago, Ava had cried. It was more than fabric. It was pride, history, and beauty sewn into every thread. Now, as she stepped out of the car and helped Zion with his backpack, the soft rustle of her dress followed her like a whisper. It was a floor-length piece in deep green with gold patterns that shimmered when she moved. She wore it with ease. Her hair was styled in a crown of thick braids wrapped into a bun. She looked like royalty walking across the wet pavement. Zion looked up at her and smiled wide. You look like a queen, Mama. Ava kissed his forehead. That is because I am. And so are you, my king. Inside the school gym, tables had been set up with food, posters, and small displays from different countries. Paper flags hung from the ceiling. Children stood by the booths with their families, wearing clothes from their cultures. There was laughter and music, but as soon as Ava walked in, the room grew quiet for just a moment. She felt every eye glance her way. Some were full of surprise. A few were full of awe. Others narrowed with quiet dislike. Bianca Sterling was standing near a table labeled France. She wore a pearl-white blouse and held a small plate of pastries. She turned slowly and looked at Ava from head to toe. "Someone decided to dress up," she said with a smirk. Marlene Devereux, who was standing nearby, chuckled. "I guess it is cultural if you bought it from somewhere online." Ava did not respond. She walked to the table labeled Nigeria, where Simone was arranging small handcrafted jewelry and fabric samples. The two women hugged warmly. Simone stepped back and smiled. "You look perfect. You look exactly how they need to see you." Zion helped set up small cards with facts about Nigerian heritage. As he worked, some children walked over. They touched the beaded bracelets and asked questions. A few smiled and nodded. Zion's eyes lit up. For the first time since starting this school, he felt proud instead of shy. Meanwhile, the group of rich mothers whispered behind their polished smiles. They looked at Simone and Ava like they were strange decorations. But one mother, a woman named Elise Jennings, stood near the edge of the crowd. She wore no fancy earrings. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid. Her daughter stood quietly beside her. Elise had been watching everything. She had heard the laughter. She had read the messages in the secret mom group chat where Marlene and Bianca joked about Ava's clothes and background. At first, Elise had stayed silent. She had told herself it was not her business. But now, looking at Zion's quiet bravery and Ava's proud eyes, she felt something change inside her. She walked over slowly and smiled at Simone. "This is beautiful work. My grandmother was from Lagos. She would have loved this." Simone beamed. "Thank you. You are always welcome at our table." Ava looked at Elise with surprise. She had not expected kindness. Not here. Not now. But she nodded gently and said thank you. Later, as the event ended, the principal stood on the small stage at the front of the room. Principal Gaines wore his usual suit and polite smile. He held a microphone in his hand. "Thank you to everyone who came today. We are proud to see such diversity and learning in our school community. Let us continue to grow and respect each other." The words sounded nice, but Ava knew they were only words. They did not match the silence she had felt when she asked for help. They did not match the way Knox had treated Zion. They did not match the way Marlene and Bianca whispered and pointed. As people began to leave, Marlene walked past Ava and whispered under her breath, "Must be exhausting trying so hard to impress everyone." Ava turned her head slowly. Her voice was calm but clear. "It is not hard to be myself. What is exhausting is pretending that cruelty is just a joke." Marlene blinked. She said nothing and kept walking. Bianca gave Ava a quick glare before following. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was turning a soft blue again. Zion ran up and grabbed Ava's hand. He held a tiny flag in his other hand. On it were the words, "I am proud of who I am," written in bright letters. Ava bent down and looked into his eyes. "You were amazing today." Zion grinned. Everyone liked the food and the bracelets. They asked so many questions. "That is because they want to learn," Ava said. "And because you showed them something true." They walked together to the car. The school behind them was still full of noise and clinking dishes. But inside Ava's heart, something had shifted. Not in the way the rich mothers thought. Not in the way the principal pretended to believe. It was something deeper. The truth of who she was no longer needed approval. She had shown up in her full light. And for the first time, the world had seen her shine. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the neighborhood, casting golden light across the rooftops. Ava sat at the kitchen table, sipping her tea in silence. Zion was still asleep in his room, curled under his favorite blanket with his stuffed lion beside him. The house was quiet except for the gentle ticking of the clock above the stove. Ava's phone buzzed. She picked it up and saw a message from Simone. It read, "You were powerful yesterday. People saw you even if they pretend they didn't." Ava smiled at the message. It gave her strength. But as she scrolled down, her smile faded. There was a screenshot from a private group chat. The same group Marlene and Bianca often used to talk behind other parents' backs. This time it was worse. Someone had taken a picture of Ava from the cultural event and added cruel words across the bottom. It said, Royal costume or royal comedy? Do scholarships come with fashion advisors now? There were several laughing emojis underneath. Some mothers added more rude comments. Others liked the post without saying anything. The group had over 30 members. Ava stared at the screen. Her hands trembled for a moment, but she did not cry. She took a deep breath. These women were not just unkind. They were cruel. And they were raising children who would learn their behavior. Later that day, Ava arrived at the school early to meet with Principal Gaines again. She wore a navy blue coat and carried a folder filled with screenshots and notes. Her walk was calm, but her steps were steady like someone walking toward the truth with no fear of it. Principal Gaines welcomed her into his office with the same polite smile as before. "Mrs. Montgomery, what can I do for you today?" Ava sat down and placed the folder on his desk. She opened it and spread the pages carefully. "I came today because I believe the school has a bigger problem than it wants to admit. This is not just about playground teasing. This is a pattern of racism, exclusion, and mockery." The principal's smile faded. He picked up one of the printed screenshots and read it slowly. He cleared his throat. "I had no idea this kind of message was being shared among the parents." Ava leaned forward slightly. "That is the problem. No one wants to know. No one wants to see it. When I came here last time, you told me children sometimes say silly things. But this is not silly. This is targeted and dangerous. These mothers are shaping the way their children treat others. They are teaching hate in small, quiet ways." Principal Gaines shifted in his chair. He looked uncomfortable. "I agree that this is unacceptable. But this is a private group chat. It is not part of the school." Ava raised her eyes to his. "When the words in that group chat cause children to exclude and bully their classmates at recess, then it becomes a school problem. When my son is pushed out of games and called names, that is a school problem. When mothers send around pictures of me with jokes about my skin and culture, that becomes a message to the whole community. It tells others that it is okay to laugh instead of speak up." The principal sat back and rubbed his chin. "What would you like me to do?" "I want the school to hold a parent meeting about respect, inclusion, and bullying. I want it to be mandatory, and I want the school to create a parent code of conduct. If children are expected to treat others with kindness, their parents should be expected to do the same." Principal Gaines was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "I will bring it up with the board." Ava stood up. "I hope you do more than bring it up, because I am not going away, and I will not stay silent." That evening, as Zion did his homework at the table, Ava sat at her laptop. She opened a blank document and began to write. She wrote about her first day at the school. She wrote about the whispers and the mocking. She wrote about the cultural event and the group chat messages. But she also wrote about her pride and her son's courage. She called it the whisper that roared. She posted it on her personal blog and shared the link in the parent group chat. At first, no one responded. But an hour later, Elise Jennings replied. Her message said, "Thank you for writing this. I have stayed quiet too long. You are right, and I will not be silent anymore." Then a mother named Latoya Monroe replied. She was new to the school and had never spoken in the group before. She wrote, "I have felt this too. I have smiled through it, but it hurt. Thank you for saying it out loud." The next day, Ava arrived at school to find something different. For the first time, she was not alone near the fence. Elise stood beside her, her arms folded. Latoya came a few minutes later with her daughter. She smiled and gave Ava a quiet nod. Inside the classroom, Zion was welcomed by his teacher, Mrs. Payne. She knelt down beside him and said softly, "I loved your rocket drawing. You are a wonderful artist." Zion smiled shyly and walked to his seat. On the playground, Knox Sterling stood near the slide again. But this time, when he told Zion he could not play, a boy named Mason spoke up. "That is not fair. Zion can play. He is cool." Knox frowned. "My mom said." Mason cut him off. "Maybe your mom is wrong." Zion looked at Mason with surprise. Then he grinned. Together, they started a game of tag with two other kids who joined in. From the bench, Ava watched it all. She felt something shift. Not in a loud way. Not like thunder. but like the quiet movement of wind through trees. Change had started. Not because she asked for permission, but because she had spoken the truth. A few minutes later, Principal Gaines walked over to her. He had a different look in his eyes now, a mixture of worry and understanding. "I read your post," he said. "The school board has agreed to schedule a parent forum next week. We will begin working on the code of conduct you mentioned." "Thank you," Ava said simply. "That is a good beginning." He nodded. "You were right. I should have seen it sooner." She gave a small smile. "Seeing is the easy part. Choosing to act is the real work." As he walked away, Ava closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in the fresh morning air. The playground was full of life. Children were running, laughing, learning how to be kind. Not all of them had learned yet, but the seeds had been planted. And Ava Montgomery was no longer just a quiet mother on the edge of the crowd. She was the voice that rose from the whisper, the voice that refused to be silenced. The day of the parent forum arrived with a bright blue sky and a wind that whispered through the trees like a quiet promise. Ava stood in front of her mirror adjusting the collar of her shirt. Today she chose something simple, a white blouse with soft ruffles and a pair of dark jeans. Her hair was in a twist out that framed her face with warmth. There was no need for anything loud. Her truth had already been spoken. Today was about showing up with grace and with power. Zion walked into the room holding a sheet of paper. It was a drawing he had made at school. He had drawn Ava wearing a golden crown and standing in front of a group of people. Behind her stood children of all colors smiling and holding hands. "Is that me, Mama?" Ava asked with a smile. Zion nodded. "That is you. And all those people listened because you told the truth." Ava held the picture to her heart. That was all she ever wanted. For someone to listen. For someone to see. At the school auditorium, the seats filled up quickly. For the first time in the school's history, every parent had shown up. Some were curious. Some were uncomfortable. Some were there because they had no choice. But all were present. Ava walked in with her head high. She saw Simone sitting in the front row. She saw Latoya and Elise and even some teachers who had never spoken up before. On the stage, Principal Gaines stood beside a large screen. He cleared his throat and began. "Today we are here to address something we have allowed for too long. Silence. Disrespect. Exclusion. We are here because one mother spoke up when others stayed quiet. We are here because her words reminded us that we cannot raise children to be better unless we are willing to be better too." A few people clapped. Some looked down at their hands. Principal Gaines gestured for Ava to come forward. She stepped up to the microphone. The lights above were warm. The room was silent. "Thank you for being here," Ava said. "My name is Ava Montgomery. I am a mother. I am a black woman. And I am no longer interested in waiting for the right time to be heard." She paused. Her voice was steady. "When I first brought my son to this school, I thought he would be safe. I thought he would be treated like every other child. But I was wrong. He was mocked. He was ignored. He was called names. And while the children did these things, it was not their ideas they were sharing. They were repeating what they saw and heard from their homes." Murmurs filled the room. Ava continued. "Some of you may think this is not about you. You may think that because you never said a cruel word out loud you are innocent. But silence is never neutral. When we stay silent while others are hurt, we become part of the harm." A few parents shifted in their seats. A few looked at each other nervously. But Ava kept going. "I wore my culture with pride at the school event. I was laughed at behind my back. Not by strangers, but by mothers I saw at drop-off every morning. Your children watched you do it. And then they copied you. The damage was not loud. It was quiet. But it was deep." Now Ava looked across the room. "We cannot heal what we refuse to name. So I will name it. This is about racism. This is about bullying. This is about exclusion that wears a fancy dress and a smile but leaves scars anyway." Her voice grew stronger. "But I am not here to ask for pity. I am here to ask for change. Real change. That begins with what we teach our children at home. That begins with what we laugh at, what we ignore, what we excuse." She looked at the front row where Zion sat beside Simone. "We must do better. For them. For the children who are watching us every day. For the children who wonder if they are enough. When she finished speaking, the room stayed silent for a moment. Then someone stood. It was Elise. She clapped once, then again. Slowly more people joined. Some stood. Some had tears in their eyes. Principal Gaines returned to the microphone. From today forward, the school will have a new parent code of conduct. There will be training sessions for parents and staff on cultural awareness and bias. And the parent group will be rebuilt with a new set of values. People nodded. A few mothers who had once laughed now looked uncomfortable. But change had arrived, and it was not waiting for their comfort. Outside after the meeting, Ava stood with Simone and Zion. A few parents came to thank her. Some apologized. Some just stood in silence, not knowing what to say. That was okay too. Ava was not waiting for perfect words. She had already won. Not because she had shouted, but because she had stood tall. Later that night, Ava tucked Zion into bed. He looked up at her and said softly, "Mama, do you think they will be different now?" Ava brushed his curls from his forehead. "I think some will. And others will try. And that is how the world gets better. One truth at a time." Zion nodded and closed his eyes. He was safe. He was proud. And he was no longer alone. Ava returned to her desk and opened her blog. She posted her final entry for the story. She titled it "When a Crown is Carried." She shared everything that happened at the forum. She told readers not just what to feel but what to do. Her last paragraph read, "If you are reading this and your heart is moved, then I ask you to do one thing. Share the story. Talk about it. Ask questions at your school. Speak up for the mother standing alone at drop-off. Let your children see you do it. Let them learn that kindness is not soft. It is strong. And it is the only way we build a better world." She ended the post with a simple sentence. If this story mattered to you, please like and subscribe to the blog. Not for fame, not for followers, but so that truth can be louder than silence. So that more crowns can be carried without shame. And then she clicked publish. The night was quiet again. But Ava knew that out there across the city and maybe even the world, other mothers were reading her words. Other children were being taught to stand tall. And somewhere far away, another little boy was learning that he too could wear his crown with pride. And Ava Montgomery finally closed her eyes, knowing that her whisper had become a roar.